In this lesson, we will learn how to animate objects along a path in 3ds Max. Path animation is another very useful tool in this software. We can use it to animate vehicles. We can also use it to animate characters walking through a scene. If we have a specific trajectory that they should travel along, we can go ahead and work with a path to have that happen. So what we'll do is create a fly-through with our aircraft using 3ds Max's path constraint. Now, very important, you'll notice that when we connect our object to the path, I've left the animation in the scene, this idle that we've created, but we'll notice that once we connect the object to the path, that its position is going to be canceled out because that is the controller that the path constraint will exist on. So it's going to create a new weight that we can work with. We most certainly can blend between the two weights, but let's take a closer look at this by first creating the path from our top view. So we'll go ahead and Alt and W click so we can go ahead and focus in on our top view. We'll press the G key to view the grid. We can now head over to our Create panel and we can go ahead and create a line. I'll just go ahead and click just a few times, let's say 4 times here to create our path. Now we'll go ahead and right click. Now you can see that this is pretty harsh, but we could smooth this out easily. Let's right click to make sure we're out of line mode. We can now move to our Modify panel, enter the vertex of object level, and with all of our points selected, let's go ahead and right click and choose Bezier. Alright, great. So you can see instantly our path is smooth. If we wanted to, we could go in and start to adjust our smoothness a bit more by selecting each vertex. We could go to our Rotate tool and rotate our tangents. If you wanted to lengthen your tangent, you can go in and scale. And of course we could go ahead and move each vertex to adjust the spacing of each point. Alright, so I think that this is going to work out well. What's nice is that even after the path is made, we can still go in and adjust it after the object has been tied to it. Okay, so let's say we move back to our perspective view and get our object connected. So here's how this works. We'd first select the object we'd like to connect, and then we could head over to Animation Constraints and grab our path constraint. So now we'll choose the path we'd like to connect it to. And take a look at what happens. We can see that our object is now animated and its length is according to our start and end time. So you can see it stops at 160, and when we get to frame 0, that's the start point of our animation. Now take a closer look at the airship. With it selected, I'll press the Z key. You'll see that yes, there is rotation, but we don't have that bopping action, that up and down, because the position controller has been canceled out. So here's our path constraint. Here's the 0 position controller that existed prior to that. If you do not see this, make sure you're under your position list. So if we wanted to get back to the idle, it's just a matter of selecting the path constraints weight here, and now we could go to our weight parameter and go ahead and set this to 0 and take a look. The ship will pop back. When we play this back, you'll see that it now idles as it normally did. Now if we were to go to rotation, you can see that the rotation is free. It does not have a path constraint, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at something really neat about that. Once we clean up the animation a bit, you can see that the position will follow. Let's go back to our path constraint here, and we'll go ahead and set our weight back to 100%. So you can see that the position follows, but the orientation does not. In order to get the orientation to match to our path, we'd scroll down in our position list until we find follow. Now when we click on follow, you can see that it will quote unquote follow the path. Now you can see that the ship is facing the wrong direction. According to our move tool, we'd have to adjust the X direction, the X axis, to fix the orientation of this ship. So let's take a closer look at our settings. We can see that it's the X axis that we're currently modifying, If we choose flip in the x-axis, now you can see that that has corrected our ship, which is really cool. Alright, so now our aircraft follows along. Now remember, we're going to talk about rotation. It is not locked down by the path constraint. Only it seems to be that way because right now it's rotating along this path. But we can freely go in and animate rotation. I'll go ahead and turn on auto key so you can see this. We can go in, grab our rotate manipulator, and just kind of rotate the ship, and you'll see that that keyframe will be saved. Great. Now you might notice when that happens that because of the object idling, because we've set it to cycle, that the track that we've animated the cycle in, which is the x-axis, as far as rotation goes, you might still see a bit of a change in the x-axis as we scrub through the animation where it continues to cycle, and that's simply because our F-curve in that axis is still set to cycle. So let me go ahead and show you something. I'm going to go ahead and head over to the curve editor with the object selected. We'll go ahead and right click. We'll grab our curve editor. And we're going to go ahead and focus in on our rotation X track. So you can see there it is. The animation is still cycling. So if we want to break this, it's just a matter of going back to our out of range types tool. So that's edit controller out of range types, and we want to go ahead and set this to constant to remove the cycle. Alright, so if you notice that you still had this type of cycle on your animation, you could go ahead and wipe it out by making sure that the out of range type was set to constant. Alright, great. I don't quite like what the ship does here, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that key right here on frame 96. I'm just going to go ahead and remove it pressing the delete key. Oh, that actually removed the entire animation. You want to be very careful here, just to make sure that just that keyframe is highlighted, and then press delete. There we go. Alright, great. So our ship is looking pretty good, but it'd be nice if it banked along the path. So in order to do so, again, we need to rely on our path settings. And take a look, right next to follow we find bank. So now the ship will curve along the path as it flies through, and we can control how much it banks by using the bank amount. So we could set this to something higher, let's say to about 3. That looks much more interesting. Let's play that back. Alright, very nice. Very cool. Now you can see that it gets pretty sharp around the end of the animation, so if you want to smooth it out, you can adjust the smoothness here. I might set this to 1. We may not want to go ahead and undo that back so we can make sure that a keyframe is not saved. It's not necessary to have a keyframe here, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn off auto key and just go ahead and undo that back so that we don't have that keyframe. And then we could go ahead and set our smoothness again to 1 to kind of smooth out the bank a bit. If we set this to a value too high, to about 10, you could see that it's going to kind of cancel out our bank. Alright, so we don't want to use a value too high for our smoothness. I'll go ahead and bring this back to 1. I kind of like what it does here. Alright, excellent. So we've learned how to animate objects along a path. Now, what if we wanted to speed up the animation a bit? Because right now, it's moving kind of slow. So if we wanted to, we could always right-click and grab our curve editor. Let's go ahead and find our path percentage. Here it is. By the way, that same parameter is right here, so if you ever wanted to, you can always go in and adjust your path percentage and animate that. Remember, to save a keyframe, we can hold down shift and right click to create that key, and then we can adjust this value to wherever we'd like the object to be along the path. So we have a lot of control. But I'm going to go ahead and again just take that key on 106 and just delete it since it's not needed, but I wanted to go ahead and show you that. Alright, but let's say, I'm just going to go ahead and undo back just a few times just to make sure that the ship starts at the time it needs to. You can see that with set key off, we've actually offset the animation, but no worries. We'll go ahead and tweak that from our curve editor, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to speed up the animation from here as well. So here's that offset. We've learned about what happens when we animate without set key or auto key. So if we wanted to, you can see that we have an 8-frame offset. So let me show you something really neat in Max. We can use a simple expression to adjust this. So we know that we need to move this keyframe 8 units up so that it's back at 0, and that will also make sure our end key is back at 100% on 160. So if we were to select both keyframes, what we could do is go to our value field. We could also do this for the frame field if we like, but we type in as follows: n plus, and then we'd use the value that we'd like to offset by. So if we were to go ahead and put in a value of 8 and hit the enter key now, you can see instantly both keys have been brought up 8 units. So now we're back at 100 and 0, and now we no longer have the animation out of its range. Alright, really neat. But let's say if we wanted to speed up the animation. Well, to do so, we could just go ahead and take this keyframe on 160, we could go ahead and bring it to an earlier frame. Let's say frame 100. Alright, so now what you'll see is that the animation will move faster. You can go ahead and start it back, hit play. Very nice. Alright, excellent. So we have learned about path animation. We've also learned that we can freely go in and add even more rotation if we'd like. Make sure when you do so, you're in one of your animation modes so you don't offset your animation in an undesirable way. Remember also that with your path, you can most certainly go in and tweak it and go to the vertex of object level and adjust it so that the ship flies according to how you would like it to fly, which is really neat. We have a lot of control here. You can have it loop up and then loop down. So again, that is path animation in Max. Very handy for animating vehicles or animating characters that need to follow a trajectory.